welcome to this week's Good Work Show. We're excited to bring you another Blast from the Past show.
Yes.
Or shows. Probably shows. Interviews. Okay.
That's a better way to say that. Yeah.
Yes, Blast from the Past interviews. So as you might have tuned in last week, we told you that this is the holiday season, and it's our favorite time of the year to go back in the archives and pull out some of our favorite interviews. We've got lots of favorites. I think everybody on the show is a favorite.
Basically.
But we pull out some of the ones that we think would be great to rehash around this time of year. So we've got some standouts for you that are going to be coming up after the break. And the first one is going to be our buddy Raphael Holloway from Gateway Center.
Are we still calling him our buddy?
I kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he made a joke about us recently, so we're going to let it slide. But
yeah. We were going to cut the episode, but then we're like, nah, that's okay.
Gateway Center does great work.
Great work.
Yes.
So, thankfully.
Yes. Big shout out to Gateway Center and the team. But they are tackling homelessness in our city. And unfortunately, it's an issue that we face in Atlanta. For a variety of reasons, people find themselves without a home to go to. And so we thank Gateway Center and Raphael for all of the work they're doing, but we want you to hear about that. We know him. He's been in front of the show. He's been on a couple of times. We know the work that they do. But if for those of you who do not know, there's lots of resources. They have lots of partners, and they're doing just great work. So we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to hear about it, learn about it, and then if you so choose to support the organization, want you to be informed.
Yeah. And then we're also going to hear from Table on Delk. Mm-hmm. Table on Delk is an organization that is working in a space that a lot of organizations are in human trafficking here in Atlanta. We know it's a major issue, and there's a lot of people doing lots of different kinds of things in order to combat this issue.
Yeah. And
this organization is just interesting because they are focused specifically on what's happening on Delk Road. Mm-hmm. And the fact, and I think this might have been one of those episodes that I got rowdy. I don't remember. I feel like it might. But just the thought that there's so much going on in there that you can have a whole organization that is focused on one road.
And I think it was only 4 miles of the road.
Yeah,
from what I remember, it was a very short span
of the road that they're focused on in a part of town that people aren't really probably thinking about. I think a lot of the times when we think about human trafficking, we're thinking about the South Side. We're thinking about near the airport. We're thinking about that kind of stuff. And this is a very suburban area where you just may not be focused and you don't know what's happening in the house or the hotel down the street and around the corner in your neighborhood as you come and go every day. So the work that they're doing at Table on Delk is incredible. And we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of bring it back and share with folks if they missed it the first time on what they're doing there.
That's right. So 2 great organizations that I think you'll enjoy hearing from the gentlemen who are going to come and share what their organizations are doing. And I think this is a good time to talk about, as we're encouraging people to listen to the shows that we're bringing back, and during the holiday and giving season, lend your support. Maybe you volunteer, maybe you give things, maybe you give money to educate yourselves on what the organizations do. So, one way you could do that is by listening to the Good Work Show, obviously, or going back to the archives and listening to some of the previous interviews because we have. So it gives you a good idea. Obviously, you're hearing from the leaders of the organizations, so you want to do your homework and do some checking. But I think by and large, a lot of people don't do enough of that. Mm-hmm. And when there's an organization or a nonprofit that is not holding up their end of the bargain and serving the people like they're supposed to be serving or has some scandal, then it makes us all kind of look bad as nonprofits. But this is a good opportunity, a learning experience for you as a donor to do some due diligence. I mean, you wouldn't just give your money away to anybody. So just because an organization is a nonprofit, don't necessarily just think that, hey, I'm just going to give to them because they sound great.
Right. And then on the flip side, there's a lot of, and we know at Goodwill, there's a lot of misinformation.
Bad information.
About
Yes.
what organizations are about, what they do with the funds. So I do think there's some resources that you can look out for. You can go to GuideStar.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's an independent organization that kind of rates nonprofits.
It's basically a watchdog organization.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are quite a few.
Yeah, and that really kind of goes out there and does a little bit of the legwork for you.
Mm-hmm.
Most organizations, especially of a certain size, will have their 990s, their tax forms on their websites. They will have their annual reports on their websites. They may
and
have
it's public information. The 990s are. It's a tax return for nonprofit organizations. Basically, their income tax return that you can get a hold of and get some information from.
Yeah, so, when you see things circulating, even about Goodwill, talking about X, Y, or Z, or, how the money is spent or where it goes and all that, or who the leadership is. There's ways that you can go and find out the truth.
Yeah.
And then that way you can, if you see it, to ignore it, or at the very least, don't spread it.
Yes. That is.
Spread it. Because that's one of the things that all nonprofits have to work against. A lot of times we're out there trying to spread the good word about what we're doing, but then you also have to spend time combating misinformation. And we all know social media, while fantastic platform for a lot of organizations to be able to share the work that they're doing, that is so much, I'm sure there's studies, I just don't know what the real answer is, on how much more quickly bad information.
Oh, for sure.
What is it like? Bad information can circle the globe, a lie can circle the globe before the truth puts its pants on, or something like that is like the quote. So it's really, it's one of those things that everybody works really hard to combat, to make sure that folks are aware. And it may be that there's organizations you don't want to support because of whatever reason.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. If you don't they're doing good work, but it's just not something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Or it's not where my heart is. But what we want to make sure is that people know.
And don't spread the bad information, even though you may not want to support. You may not want to support Goodwill, or you may not want to support, I don't know,
anything.
Another organization.
Yeah.
But don't spread bad information, especially if you haven't researched it yourself.
Right. And that's honestly about anything
that is
and
true.
anyone.
Any brand.
Or any person or anything like that,
Yes.
Our little PSA. But all of these organizations, we bring them to you, to Elaine's point. We bring them to you. We bring the leadership. They're talking about what they're doing. But if there's something that you hear and you're like, that sounds interesting, but maybe I want to learn a little bit more, there are resources out there for you to kind of dig a little bit deeper, find a little bit more information, just to make sure it's a place that you want to connect yourself to. We think that a lot of the organizations that we've talked to, many of them, most of them, are great. Yeah. And, they're a good place. They're doing great work. They typically bring stories with them. They're able to share some real world examples of the good work that they're doing. We believe in them. But do your homework if you want to get a little bit more information. But this is, it's downtime. You may have a little downtime around the holidays, and folks may have a New Year's resolution to get involved and do a little bit more. I want to volunteer a little bit more next year and that kind of stuff. And that, if that isn't your New Year's resolution, perhaps it could be. Just a suggestion.
Think before you donate. That is the message of the day. Think before you donate. Do a little bit of research, and you can always visit the nonprofit.
Yeah.
If I would red flag if you're giving to someone and you say, "Hey, I want to come by and just get a tour," or "I'm a donor and I'd love to see more and learn about the work that you're doing." If they say, "We're not sure about that," that's a red flag. Yeah. So there you go. I think you can always go to the place.
If there is a place.
If there is a place. Or the website, it's great. I mean, you can find out a lot about an organization by perusing their website.
Yeah. So take that little piece of advice.
Yeah, there you go. So yes, Gateway Center and Table on Delk will be coming up after the break. We hope that you all are enjoying your holiday season. And we intend to enjoy ours as we bring you some of our favorites for the next couple of weeks into the new year for 2020. And we'll be back in 2020. I think we should figure out what we're going to do in 2020 that'll be new for the show. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, maybe we have a new intro.
Hats.
Hats.
I don't know.
I wasn't. I was thinking more like on the show, like add a segment or change up the intro. Like we should, like a refresh. It's 2020. Like that's a monumental
We should
year.
wear glasses.
I mean, we could wear glasses. I mean, we both wear glasses from time to time, but I feel it's show related.
No, it was 2020. 2020
Oh.
vision. 2020.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
More jokes.
Better jokes.
Puppies?
No, we're not doing the animal kingdom.
Just
Oh, you
saying.
want to go? That's a
Everybody
different
else.
show. You can do that one. I'll come in and guest host with you sometimes, but I'm gonna let you do the animal show by yourself.
Well, I only want like 3 shows. That's like I'd want bunny rabbits.
That's
I'd want
just
like
a series. That's a mini series.
it
not
is
a
like
show.
baby otters and like a puppy.
I feel like that's an on location show.
Right. So it's not like a full. That wouldn't be like a full. Because there's only
You could actually do that in one episode.
right. Because there's only so many animals I'd want to actually.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Visit.
if you have any ideas on how we could refresh the show in 2020 with something cool, interesting that aligns with what we're doing. The whole show is about highlighting the good work that nonprofits
Don't get out of
do.
control.
Yeah, not bringing in endangered species, which is a great. We've had organizations that support endangered species on the show. That is not the mission of this show, but something that aligns with what we do. Maybe we'll consider adding it. So give us a shout out on social media at Good Work Show on Instagram, Good Work Show on Facebook and Twitter. Or you can email us at goodworks@ging.org and just give us an idea. We'd love to hear the ideas about what you think we could do differently, better. And maybe there's more nonprofit topics that you want to hear about. So anyway, we'd love to hear from you. After the break, you're going to hear from Raphael Holloway from Gateway Center. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We have a really special guest with us. We've got Raphael Holloway, who is the CEO of the Gateway Center. We have had Gateway Center on, it's been over a year since you've been on the show.
Yeah.
But you were calling in, and now we got you live and in person.
Glad to be here.
Yes, yes. So for those few people, because Gateway Center is all over the place. So for those few people who may not know what Gateway Center does, explain to our audience what Gateway Center is all about and what your mission is.
Absolutely. Well, first, I want to thank you all for having me again and the opportunity to share about Gateway. Gateway Center is a homeless service center, and I'm specific about calling it a homeless service center versus a shelter. Shelter usually creates a thought of just beds and covering, and it's much more than that. We are an organization that's been providing services to the homeless community of Atlanta since July of 2005. We annually serve about 10,000 individuals, and that's 1,200 in our residential program, where we have 490 beds of housing available. As an organization, what we try to be to community is a starting point, which is where the name Gateway came from. So it's that gateway or starting point for individuals that are experiencing homelessness and just want to maybe get basic needs met initially. You can access showers, phone, healthcare services, IDs, birth certificates. And then through that relationship that's built through accessing basic needs, then you can decide if you would like to try to secure additional housing, short-term housing, or quote-unquote shelter beds. And then from that shelter bed, we provide intensive case management that helps with linking people to long-term housing solutions. And then we partner with other agencies within the city to provide wraparound supports to our clients.
That's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So 490 beds makes you probably one of the largest, if not the largest.
Second largest.
Second.
Atlanta Mission, I believe, has more beds than we do.
Okay, but that's a lot.
That's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And plus, and plus. All
Yes,
the other.
that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
So talk to us a little bit about the history of the organization. So we're 14 years this month.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about, so happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Thank
How
you.
did it come to be? So how did this, like Elaine said before, everybody knows now about Gateway and all the good work, and well, not everybody, but enough people know about it. So how did this whole thing start?
Well, we have the pleasure of having our history being connected and anchored to a thought and a concern that was initiated by then Mayor Shirley Franklin. At the time, there being a number of homeless service providers in the city, Mayor Franklin recognized that it's very difficult for people experiencing homelessness to access services. So she made a request to United Way. United Way convened a group of individuals to make an assessment. What were the best practices throughout the country that ensured that people could have improved access to services and thus linked to short-term residential beds. And what was discovered in all the different strategies was a model that was this wraparound model, this one-stop shop. And so the team gave the recommendation to Mayor Shirley Franklin. She looked at the city's resources, and at the time, the facility that we're in is the former Atlanta City Detention Center, and it was vacant. So a committee was put together, some documents were drafted, and that launched what is now the Gateway Center. There was a fundraising campaign, obviously, to rehab the building, to try to soften the look of the building because it was a correctional facility, to make it more welcoming and inviting for social services. But that's where we got our start, and I'm really proud and excited to be the offspring of an idea to be innovative and creative, to create something new to support people in need in Atlanta.
Yeah. I think that's a great story, though, taking something that was once vacant and negative, but turning it into something super positive in a way that people want to come and not people where they want to get away from.
Right.
Exactly. So you mentioned short-term homelessness, but there's also chronic homelessness, and I think we got into this the last time we were talking about it. But give us some insight into what that means for people who may not, kind of be aware. They probably know what it might mean, but they may not know all the ins and outs of it.
So in our population of homelessness in the city of Atlanta, which is about 3,000 individuals through our point-in-time count that have been identified. Some will debate the number, but for the city of Atlanta, that's a close count, and it's a measure that's being used, a way of measuring that is standardized across the country and has proven to be the best way for us to get some general idea of the epidemic here in Atlanta. So from that 3,000, a lot of people are cycling in and out of homelessness. So we may all know someone that had a 30-day stint, 6-month stint, but chronic homelessness are those individuals who have had longer episodes of homelessness. And so anyone that's had 12 months consecutively of homelessness would be considered chronic, but not just 12 months. It has to be 12 months and also with a disability. So oftentimes it's a medical condition, positive HIV status. Those individuals get prioritized as being chronically homeless. Also, you can have 3 different episodes of homelessness within kind of a 2-year period that totals the 1 year, and it could also be defined as being chronically homeless. Why that's done, why delineate?
Yeah.
That's really a HUD definition that is used to help with prioritization, because the goal is to leverage the sometimes limited resources to ensure those most in need are being helped first.
Yeah.
Not that we do not want to help everyone, but if we can address those that are most in need, that we recognize will have the most challenges with self-resolving, then we try to identify and target those for our services.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we might have touched on this a little bit just with the idea of the wraparound services, but I just really want to make it really clear for folks how the work that the Gateway Center is doing differs from, like what we talked about, not to diminish anything that any of like the shelters or because that stuff is absolutely necessary. I mean, it's how hot is it outside right now?
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be standing out there in that heat. I complained about my air conditioner not working, and I was like, oh, woe is me. I couldn't sleep because it was hot one day. But when you think about that in areas, especially here in Atlanta, it's incredibly hot. It gets incredibly cold. So we don't want to diminish that, but how does the other stuff at the Gateway Center differentiate and make it just different? Not better, but just different.
Oh, we're going to say better. My colleagues, we have friendly competition.
Okay, cool.
But we should all be competing to be the best, and that ensures that our guests that are served are getting the best type of service from each of us. So what makes us slightly different, I think, again, my colleagues in the space would share, is that Gateway was designed to be a collaborative space from the beginning. So this partnership that we have, which is right now consists of on-site, about 12 additional service agencies come on site, scheduled weekly to be at our location, to be part of the fabric of what Gateway is and what we can offer to community. Not that organizations hadn't partnered in the past, but to be a scheduled, ongoing partnership, leveraging resources to ensure that really our missions align to have the same desired impact. It was called a wraparound model initially, but it's really a collective impact model that we're saying that, okay, we're never going to have limits in how much there will be available in funding. But we can do more together, and that's any community. And what I share with our guests that reside with us or our new team members that join us is that it's really a village approach. The village is always stronger when the village works together. And if we can model that village approach within the organization, the hope is then that we can also demonstrate to others how they can be involved and engaged and become part of that village.
Yeah, that's really cool. So talk to us about what happens when people come to Gateway Center. So, so maybe I'm homeless. I don't, I have children. Or talk to us about that. Is it adults and children? Is it just adults? Is it just men? Is it, there's all these things that, so talk to us when someone comes to you and they say, I need help. What happens and what do they get when they walk through your door?
So the first thing that I would hope for any guests presenting at our facility, the first thing they should get is a sense of being treated with dignity and respect. I think that each of us here could acknowledge that there may have been things at some point in time when you were engaging with someone that you was experiencing homelessness on the street, that maybe you could have gave them a little bit more eye contact. You maybe could have just spoken and acknowledged their presence. Doesn't mean that you had to give money, food, or any of those other kind of things. But there's just a level of respect that we give people that are sheltered that sometimes our unsheltered community doesn't receive. So the first thing I hope that they receive is a sense of dignity and respect. Then you have the option of choice. As I mentioned, what we call our client engagement center is an opportunity for people to decide where they want to plug in. So it could just be showers, it could just be phone charge, the other services I mentioned. But for those who are ready for change, you are then referred to our Clear Path program for what is called coordinated entry. And coordinated entry provides you with that initial assessment. We're assessing your needs on if you're chronically homeless or not, what has caused your homelessness, what resources you have, is there a way to self-resolve? And then from there, either linking you with one of the beds that we have at our facility or with our partner organizations in community or other shelters to get you linked into a shelter placement. And so that's pretty much what people can expect. They have choices. And so we want people to feel empowered, but we also want you to still have a choice.
And I'm sure that's a big deal.
That is a big deal,
a lot of folks, if you're in a certain situation, you don't feel like you have choices and options. So on top of giving folks some respect, you're also giving them ways to define for themselves what their path is forward.
Yeah. And I like the opportunity, what you mentioned about Gateway, where there is an opportunity just to come in. If you just want to shower, if you just, because I'm not ready, everybody isn't ready for that. And so I think that's awesome that you have those multiple doors in which you can walk into. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, Raphael. We're going to talk a little bit more, dig into some of those programming, talk to and speak about some of the organizations that you partner with, because they've been guests on our show. But before we do that, for folks who want more information, who might want to either refer somebody over, they want to learn more about the work that you're doing, give us your website address and how they get in contact with you.
Definitely. Our website is www.gatewayctr.org.
Okay. And you're located too?
We're located at 275 Pryor Street. That is South Downtown, right at the corner of Pryor and Memorial Drive.
All right. Well, we're going to come back. Audience, hang with us. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We are sitting here with our good friend Raphael Holloway, who is the CEO of Gateway Center, an organization that is using a partnership, collective impact model to really help address Atlanta's homelessness issue and really giving people a choice. And I think that is really smart on behalf of the Gateway Center, but it definitely speaks to that the human-centered model in which you're doing. You're treating and putting the client first and letting them make a decision about where they want to go. So I think that's really cool. So we've been talking a little bit about what Gateway Center does, how you were formed, some of the programming. But talk to us. You give the people who are coming through your doors in your residents and clients an opportunity to give back. And I think that's really interesting, and pay it forward a little bit. So tell us about your resident intern programs and the ways that you're allowing the folks who are coming to you and receiving services to make that full circle.
So we're really excited about our resident intern program, and actually we just in the past week have made some adaptations to that program. Okay. And so one of the things in that resident intern program is our guests volunteer on site. And so again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a village, and so we're all responsible for maintaining the village. And you feel a sense of pride when you also feel a sense of ownership, or when you have say, or when you're cleaning certain areas or monitoring certain areas, then it also models for others. The other piece that we've done with our resident intern program is to really lift it up. So in the past, through this volunteering opportunity, we, through our fundraising, provided the guys with a stipend. More recently, a new partnership with WorkSource Atlanta, the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency, we've been able to actually turn it into a true paid internship opportunity.
That's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
So we have lifted it up and transformed what we were providing before into structured learning programs. So, for example, we have a culinary training program where the guys go through 10 weeks with us, but as part of that 10 weeks of classroom time and actual work. And so WorkSource Atlanta has leveraged their funds to actually pay these gentlemen an hourly wage while they're in the training program, which oftentimes was the reason why people wouldn't participate in the training program, because you were doing it for free.
That's right.
So now
we see that a lot too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now we have that opportunity for you to not just get a job, but you can now start building plans towards a career, earn a wage, and it's a competitive wage. It's for the culinary program, the guys are earning about $11 an hour. Nice. We're actually about to start a custodial maintenance training program. Those gentlemen will earn $13 an hour. Fantastic. The wage is based on market, and it's about $1 less than market, but it's so that when they get hired, they can move forward. That's right. And so we've been able to leverage that relationship to then enhance some of the other private-public partnerships we already had with local hotels, convention centers, as well as restaurants, to create a path that not only will you be trained, earn a wage, but can be placed into employment. Yeah. So we're really, really excited about our resident intern program and how it has evolved to better meet the needs of the guests that are in our facility.
See, now you're speaking our goodwill language.
I thought you both might like that.
Yeah, hearing all these things. So all of these things, and I'm just going to back up something you said before, talking about the partner organizations that come in to provide all the different services. So talk to us a little bit about who these folks are and what kind of resources and stuff that they are bringing to the table, so that when people come to the Gateway Center, they get a good understanding of who they're going to actually interact with and for what.
Okay, so one partner I'll emphasize is Georgia Works. I know Georgia Works has been on the show here, and they have been a partner at our facility for a number of years. And this job training, for example, is also basically our attempt at job readiness. So everyone isn't ready to always go right out to work. Right. So a great partnership with Georgia Works is that we can now train people who aren't necessarily ready for job placement, but they are still our job placement provider. So we do the job readiness and some placement, but they're directly job placement. They have leveraged relationships with area businesses to say, hey, we have these gentlemen that have been trained by us and they're ready to be hired, and we will monitor them and basically deal with any or most of your supervisory needs and issues. That's a great opportunity for an employer to say, hey, maybe I wouldn't have given one of these gentlemen a job if they just walked in, but I have this trusted relationship, and I know that if there's any issues, Georgia Works is going to step in and assist us with that partnership. Additional partnership that's very important to us that's been there since day one is our partnership with Mercy Care. Mercy Care offers a federally qualified health clinic on site. So there's not a reason for anyone that is interested or desirous of healthcare services not to be able to be connected. So our case managers, that's one of the first steps that we know that we try to connect individuals to, because if people feel better, they perform better, and then that also allows them to be at work, not miss days at work and those kind of things. So I would say Georgia Works, Mercy Care. We have other partnerships that I can name very quickly. First Steps is an employment partner. We have a relationship with Crossroads Ministries to provide IDs and birth certificates. We work with,
and that's a big deal.
That is a huge
That's
deal.
a big, and I think that's something, and I don't want to rush past that, because if you need a job, the first thing that they ask you for is some sort of identification.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about it even within the context of other things. We've talked about folks who need ID to vote.
Yep.
Or, other things. But that, I think, is a huge,
it's
thing for folks to know that they can.
And then
have
you
that
also
as-
feel like you have something, though.
Yeah, I am somebody.
I am somebody, and I can show you.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so that's a huge partnership. Then also aligned with our wellness efforts is the partnership with Back on My Feet, which is a run club. I think many people are surprised that there's actually a run club of formerly or still currently people who are experiencing homelessness that get together 5 o'clock in the morning. They run together. It builds camaraderie. Also, again, strengthens the village, gives that sense of pride, makes you feel really affirmed. You're part of something. They compete in many of the local 5Ks.
Yeah, they sucked Elaine and I in a couple weeks ago.
We had Nicole on the show.
Okay.
Yes, and we did the treadmill-a-thon.
Okay.
With the Peachtree Road race.
They didn't talk you into the 5 a.m. run group?
No.
They tried.
Yeah.
They tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the partnerships are again what makes us different, as you said earlier. Not that others don't have these partnerships; they really are embedded into how we desire to deliver services, and it's really also an opportunity to say to the community, we're trying to be efficient with the resources that we have.
Right.
Oftentimes, there's duplication.
Yes.
What we try to do is ensure that we're not adding or delivering a service that someone else has historically done better at, and there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. And so we leverage those partnerships, bring those partnerships in, and then we listen to clients. We have a client survey that we administer once a month to all of our guests, and we can hear from our guests what would they like to see as a service, and we build those partnerships that way. Additional one that I would just like to point out is with University for Parents has been providing a fatherhood group for us, and it's really been, again, transformative to the men who have participated in that group, because it really digs in and starts to look at, before you can parent, how were you parented to? What is your experience as being a parent? Because that oftentimes influences your success or your lack of success at being a parent if you haven't really addressed some of those issues. So, again, a wide range of services are available, again, for those who choose and want to participate in them.
Yeah. Cool. So we got about 3 minutes left. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, though, and ask you, because you mentioned the client survey, and I think that's a real interesting part, again, going back to putting the people that you serve first, and designing the services around what they need and what they say they need. So what's one thing that they've told you in that survey that you're not offering now that you're like, boy, I hear you, and I'd love to add this service, or actually we're going to do it. What's in the pipeline?
So one thing, just to be very honest, what they speak to us often about is, well, one is food. They want more food. The food quality is good, but they want more.
Okay.
So that's always number one. Number two has been something that we honestly can't control, and we try to advocate for, which is affordable housing. So we have a large number of gentlemen in our program, and I'm sorry I didn't mention earlier, on the walk-up services, we service men, women, children, anyone can walk up for services.
Good.
On the residential side, in our beds, we only house men. So we refer women and children out to our partners. But the men that are in our program are getting these jobs, saving revenue from jobs that either we link them to, jobs that they find, and they can't launch to the next level. And it becomes very frustrating. And so their question to us often is, what are we doing to help them find more affordable options? And so we are, or myself and board members and others do participate in a number of the community conversations, task force, and other things to try to address the affordability issue. But I think that there are opportunities to tell our story more. This is a great avenue of doing that, to make people aware that if you have residential properties and maybe you want to make that property available for people transitioning out of homelessness, and they can rent it from you at an affordable rate, then contact Gateway Center. We would be more than happy to discuss how we can leverage that. But that's the biggest need, is their desire to move on, but there not being resources in the city limits typically available for them. So, quick example: if I'm making $12 to $14 an hour, the rent needs to be about $650 to $800 max.
Yeah.
That's very difficult to find.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In city limits.
Yeah, it's very difficult to find outside city limits
or anywhere.
To today's,
Exactly.
Or
Yes.
accessible to transportation to get
Exactly.
to jobs and all that.
Yeah,
kind
you
of
know,
stuff.
and for people just getting back on their feet, they need to be close to work so that they can get there and create those habits of doing all of that.
Absolutely.
And they probably, again, transportation is going to be a
Adding
big one.
child care issues,
Yes.
getting back to child care facilities in time, and then the
Absolutely.
fees associated with being late and not having transportation. So those are the main things
Yeah.
that we get often, is how can Gateway or others help them with accessing more affordable housing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's a song that we need to sing across Atlanta for a lot of different people. So last couple seconds, give us again website address, how people can learn more, how they can support the work that Gateway Center is doing.
Gateway Center is gatewayctr.org. Best way you can assist us is through your time, talent, and treasures. We have a volunteer program with about 6,000 volunteers a year. Your talents, we have skilled volunteer opportunities. So that if you have a specialty that you want to bring, accounting, marketing, graphics, whatever it may be. And then obviously your treasures. And that treasure can also be time or money. But funds help the world go around at
Yes.
Gateway.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Raphael. And big shout out to everybody who is working at Gateway Center.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We are excited to have Scott Williford with us. He is the co-founder, right? Co-founder of the Table on Delk. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. Well, so we're excited because you and your wife founded an organization called the Table on Delk. Why don't you tell our listeners and our viewers all about what it is, what you do, and your mission?
So the Table on Delk came about for over a number of reasons and a number of things that have happened in our lives. But our focus is helping women and children that are either at risk or currently being sexually exploited on Delk Road in Cobb County, just 2 exits outside of 285.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so specific.
Yeah.
So I have other questions, but I actually, and this might be, well, it is. I'm going to skip down to the third question.
That's fine.
On my little trusty list. Why this organization and why Delk Road? Because I am unfamiliar with what's happening there. So tell us.
So my wife and I have both always been very involved, and we've had our family very involved in different types of outreach and mission work and ministry. And she had been very engaged with another organization here in Atlanta called Out of Darkness, which is the anti-trafficking arm of the Dream Center. And she did pretty much every role that could possibly happen inside that organization, except for being a paid position. And she was working with what they called the jail ministry, where they went into jails and they would visit with girls that were identified as being sexually exploited. In those conversations in Cobb County Jail, a girl said, "Oh, you're that group that goes out on Fulton Industrial Boulevard and talks to people and helps them get off the streets. Why don't you do that on Delk Road?" And my wife was like, "Delk Road, that's the exit we get off to go to East Cobb." And what do you mean? And she gave some more information. And so over the next several months, God made it very, very clear to us that we were the ones that were being called to go to those people. Yeah. And that's how it started.
Wow. So I know people have heard, and if they've been listeners of our show, they've heard us have other organizations on that that are working to tackle this issue in our community and in Atlanta. And just remind everybody, though, how large the scope is, because you mentioned Fulton Industrial. You also mentioned Delk Road. There are pockets across our area, unfortunately, where, women, children, young boys, men are being, trafficked. So talk about how big the numbers are.
So what most people are shocked to find out that in Metro Atlanta alone, statistically and mathematically, it's over a $300 million illegal sex industry.
Jeez.
Just in Atlanta.
$300 million.
And that's just Atlanta. And the other stat that I quote a lot is that the Johns are not flying in. They're not convention workers. 70+% of the Johns live north of 20 between 75 and 85.
Wow.
Most of 40-something% of them live between Marietta and Johns Creek. And it's not just Fulton Industrial. It's not just Cheshire Bridge Road. It's not just Delk Road. I live off of Sandy Plains Road in Cobb County, and I drive by 3 exotic massage parlors on 6 miles of stretch of a road in suburban Cobb County.
Wow.
So it's everywhere, and it's a bad problem. And Atlanta, there's a stat that goes around sometimes that Atlanta's the worst city in the country. But how that came about is they were alphabetically number one time. But they are in the top 10.
Yeah.
Well, it's
or
not
the
good.
worst 10.
That's
for
true.
sure.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm just going all completely off track. So just bear with me. But so you talked about, you live in, suburban Cobb County. I live not far from there. Areas in town that I think it's important to talk about, because I think this issue comes up. I know we've had guests on the past where it was right around the Super Bowl, or it was right around these big events, like you were talking about, these big conventions. And that's where people think when we talk about this issue that it's surrounding those kinds of things, and maybe it's happening in different parts of town. But that part which you just shared with us, the kind of the geography of where this is happening, is new information for me, as much as we've talked about this issue. So what are things that I don't know what I'm looking for? So like, even if I were to say like, well, this looks odd, or how would even just regular run-of-the-mill folks going about their business recognize a sign that this doesn't smell right? Like, something about this doesn't look right in my neighborhood.
Well, so there are organized sex rings that have houses throughout all of Metro Atlanta, and you hear about them getting busted and everywhere from Milton to Cobb to Gwinnett County. But one thing that I now am aware of, because we're doing this, is that extended stay motels often have individuals who have used their body or are using their body in order to get diapers for their kids. So anywhere you have an extended stay motel and a homelessness issue, the women there are at risk and may already be sexually exploited. And so that's one thing. The other thing is that massage parlors in particular, when I drive down Sandy Plains Road, there's massage parlors that are open at midnight. Well, no, that's not an appropriate time to go get a massage because your back hurts. So you can tell that pretty quickly. So does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, because that's the stuff that, if you're not thinking about, or you think that you're looking for certain signs, whether things that we are accustomed to, whether it's people that are on the side of the street or in, I feel like that's what people are attuned to, and they talk, and there's a lot of good signage, I think, even in the airports now, where they're like telling you certain things to look for. And I feel like those things show up in those locations where people may be kind of attuned, but I'm not thinking about it necessarily in Sandy Springs, where I live. Hi, everybody in Sandy Springs. But there might be something there where if you're, in this whole see something, say something kind of
Well, one of the things that
I don't know that people know what they're looking for when it comes around this issue.
The reality is that both the purchasers of these activities and the individuals are everywhere. We live in an over-sexualized society now. Both men and women are all tied up about how they look and how they act, and TV shows that we see today at 8:00 with all of our kids, they wouldn't even been on the air 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
And so we definitely have this over-sexualized society in America, and we also, because of that, it's driving appetites, and then with always on, always access to pornography and those kind of things, that's a gateway drug. The 12-year-old kid who's looking at porn, that's a gateway drug for him wanting something more when he's 17 or when he's 25 and he's got the money to buy it. And so the news that you see and hear a lot about is about the girl that is captured or taken.
Yes.
The reality is that's less than 10% of the girls. Most of the women that have been rescued out of human trafficking or sexual exploitation, as we like to refer to it, 91%, 92% of them, their first sexual encounter was before the age of 12 with someone that they knew. Their father, their brother, their uncle, their neighbor, their boyfriend, someone that they knew intimate. And that kind of introduced them. I mean, I know victims, survivors, they were victims and now they're survivors, that they were married and pregnant. They were pregnant and then married before the age of 14. Wow. And now they've got 9, 10 children.
Oh my goodness.
And they have to continue to turn tricks, if you will, in order to pay for diapers. And so it's survival sex. So it's bad.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of opportunities for people to help. And I guess we should dig into the table on Delk, what that means.
We do.
Because it is very interesting, and I love the concept of how you're approaching it, because it's a little different than what people might do. So talk to us about how you are helping, and then some of the volunteer opportunities, because there are many ways people can plug in and help.
Absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up. So one of the things that we wanted to do is it's very relational. We want people to be loved and feel loved. And so what we tell all of our volunteers is your goal is 2 things. First is to connect them to the love of Christ. And second is to connect them to resources. But they don't want those resources until they know that you care and that you love them. And so every time we have volunteers come in, it's their first time we communicate. Look, we just want you to form relationships. We just want you to hang out and be friendly and love people. And then they will begin to trust you and trust the ministry, so that when times come that we can connect them to Out of Darkness or Gigi's House or one of these other organizations that can help them get off the streets, then we can do that. And to volunteer with us, you go to thetableondelk.org, and there's a volunteer click, and you can come on a Saturday or a Wednesday and do outreach with us. You can provide food. We have something 5 days a week right now that there's a meal and stuff in some sort. Now, public kind of sign up and come and serve are Wednesdays and Saturdays. The other things you can drop food off, but the volunteers there, it's a little more intimate. And so we try to select the volunteers that volunteer there. Fantastic. First step is coming on Wednesday or Saturday.
All right. Cool. All right, cool. And so you mentioned the website. Of course, because this is ministry, and what people don't realize, ministry takes money. So there are opportunities for people to support you financially as well. So on the website,
our number one needs people.
People.
That's the most interesting thing, is that we felt, my wife and I both felt, that we didn't want staff, and instead we wanted 100% of the money to go to ministry.
Fantastic.
So we don't have any staff. And so all of the proceeds that we raise go directly to the ministry. And we've expanded what we offer because of the generosity of the public and generosity of our connections, so that now we're helping women. We're helping pay for some of those treatment programs. We're helping victims who have come back into society integrate by providing them places to stay and connections and stuff like that. But they can donate for sure. It still takes money.
Yeah. Well, Scott, appreciate all of the work that you and your wife are doing. It's an honor to talk to you, have you on the show. The Table on Delk, everyone, please go to the website, give, support, volunteer. Thank you so much for stopping by the Good Work Show.
Thank you. It's been fun.